Happy New Year. It's 2014. Do you know where your money is? Do you know what your money's doing? This program might help you feel the horizons ahead and find out what's going on in your financial future. Money Talks right now. Best-selling author, a very successful man on Wall Street who decided to go into public education, and a young financial advisor who's making his mark. We have them all right here tonight with hopefully a candid look at what to do with your money. We're not going to give you stock advice, but hopefully you'll get some practical advice on how to survive 2014 in your financial worth. With us tonight, and we're very happy to have Brennan Lothry. Brennan is the former lead reporter for Bloomberg Television during the financial crisis. Those must have been very tough days. Financial advisor with the Wealth Management Group. Tom Corley. Tom is a certified financial planner and author of this book, best-selling book, Rich Habits, The Daily Success Habits of Wealthy Individuals, and it was a bestseller on Amazon, bestseller everywhere, and still selling. And Keith Balderson, Kurt Balderson. Kurt has an interesting story here. For many years, he was a currency trader on Wall Street until 9/11. And he was at the Twin Towers, and now he has devoted his life to helping young people see their future. He's a teacher at Great Valley High School in Malvern, Pennsylvania, and that is quite a switch to go from the markets. I'm not going to ask you why you left. I have some ideas, with everything that happened there. But when you look at a person who's watching us tonight, whether their financial worth is this or this or this, what kind of practical advice can you give them on how to start the year? You're supposed to make resolutions when you come to a new year.
I think all successful people have a plan in place. That's no different in finances. There has to be some sort of financial plan. The old terminology, I guess the negative connotation is you have to have a budget where you're taking what you make, your income minus your expenses, and what you have left over. More positive way of looking at it is to have a financial plan and to have goals and objectives and means realistic goals and objectives that you're able to achieve. And I would focus on the short-term goals rather than the longer-term goals. And once you achieve a short-term goal, set another short-term goal for yourself.
Well, Brendan, I have to ask you a question. It seems from everything I've read in Wall Street Journal and everywhere else that more people are saving today at a more accelerated rate than they were during the financial crisis, which was a very scary time. When you talk to your clients, what do they want to know from you? In general.
Well, first thing you want to know is where are we going to get income from? Right. I deal with a lot of retirees in one respect, and we see where interest rates are today, and they're very low. So one of the first things that they ask about is where are we going to find income? Because obviously the savings account that we've been having before, or the CDs, are really only earning 0.5%,
right.
1%, 2%. So where can we go out and find that? And then two, is my money going to last as long as I need it? That's what I think people really don't understand, because many folks actually do not have a plan like you had mentioned, and they need to have one.
I met somebody on a golf course once. It was at the time older than me, and I said to him, "How you doing?" He said, "I would have been better if I knew I was going to live this long." And it was a very interesting comment. And sometimes people don't really think about the 70s, 80s, or 90s in their lives. Is that true?
It's the old financial planning catchphrase. If you don't plan, if you fail to plan, then you're going to be in trouble. So more people actually plan for their vacation than they plan for their retirement. And one of the things I talk about a lot, it's in my book, about the living below your means rich habit. People are not taught by their parents to save, and I call it the 80-20 rule. Put away 20% of your savings and live off of the 80%. If you teach your kids that, then it becomes a rich habit. It becomes a habit that stays with them for life. And Larry, habits are hard to break.
Very hard to break.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about your role is that you go into with a unique perspective. What actual course do you teach at high school?
I teach personal finance. I teach 2 sections of that at Great Valley High School.
They never taught me in high school.
Well,
that's a long time ago. They never taught me practical things like how do you know what they said to us in high school? That in your life, most of you will make $500,000. That's what they thought in 1960. But they never talked about how to accelerate and save and make yourself a more richer person along the way. That's good for students to hear you talk about that.
It's still in the state of Pennsylvania. Personal finance business courses are still an elective. The big push in business education nowadays are courses like personal finance or financial literacy is the new terminology that teach relevant everyday skills that no matter if the student is going to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company
Like
or
balancing a checkbook. As simple as that.
balancing a checkbook, how to invest, how to allocate risk.
What are the different types of investments that are actually out there? That's one of the things that I think is lacking out there today is we do not have that financial education in place early on, because
Right.
you would be surprised that how many people do not know what a stock is, what a bond is, what a mutual fund is, and that they should be starting earlier rather than in their 40s or 50s. to save
And
for
there's no set answer, is there? Because I remember years ago, somebody looked, we had a 401 plan in one of the places I worked, and everybody said, all you have to do is buy the Dow, the dogs of the Dow. That was 1 year. The dogs of the Dow were gigantic, the ones who didn't do well. You buy the dogs of the Dow fund, you're going to get 10% a year. Not so, right?
No.
There's no constant, is there?
No, there is no constant, and in fact, for each person, it's going to be slightly different, because remember, as we talked about earlier, about setting goals and objectives, because everyone's going to have a different goal or objective. Some folks are going to retire at 55. Some are going to want to retire at 65. Well, that's an extra 10 years of compounding your money that you're going to be able to have. So each person is going to be different.
Now, the rich habits here. I know you got a little heat for saying the daily success habits of wealthy individuals, but you're really talking about looking at people who are successful in life as well as finance. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what I did is I tried to look at them holistically. We tracked over 200 daily activities, and then I broke it out into, rich group, poor group, and then I analyzed that for about 18 months. And what I came up with was a difference the size of the Grand Canyon behind their habits. And that's why I think it's so cool, Kurt, that you're a finance guy that's teaching high schools. I spent probably the first 2 years, when I should have been out there with the media promoting my book, talking to over 2,000 high school students, because the teachers, if the parents aren't doing the job, Larry, at home, then the teachers have to do the job. They have to step in and teach these kids some of these good financial habits, these success habits. It has to happen in the school, and that's why you're a finance guy, you're in the high schools, you're teaching from experience, and I think that's very valuable. Those kids are very lucky to have you.
You're young, okay? You're young, perhaps the youngest person here, close to it. I know you're younger than me, and when you go to get a client, whether they be near retirees, people in their 40s who are thinking about 20 years plus, is it tough to provide a layer of credibility to them? I mean, you've been on television, and you've been in this business for a while now, and you really like it, you're doing well. What do they want to know from you? I mean, yeah, municipal bonds, are they safe? Stocks, are they safe? Stock funds. Is diversity the big thing you talk about?
Well, diversification is certainly important. I think the first thing when someone approaches me, they want to know is, am I Bernie Madoff or am I not Bernie Madoff?
Yeah.
Am I a trustworthy person who they're going to be accepting the financial advice from? So I think that's usually the first thing that clients out there are looking for. Can they sit across from you? Do they think that you actually know what you're talking about and that you're going to provide them honest, truthful advice about whatever goes on in the market? I don't think they're looking for the magic bullet, but they want to have an idea that you do know maybe where the magic bullet might be.
What about, Tom, the necessity? This is a very touchy subject. We've had people watching us with net worths of $50,000, $500,000, $100,000, some having a hard time saving at all. That's January. It's the first weekend in January. What would you say to people right now? Well, I'm going to ask all of you this. What do you do right now? You take a look at what you got, see what you want to do with it?
I again come back to having a plan where you want to be at certain points of your life, and you have to start thinking, at least from my perspective, teaching kids, you have to start thinking about retirement the second you get
What
out
about
of
risk? Do you have to take, and I'm not talking about going to the casino here, all right? I'm talking about investment. Do you have to take some risk to get where you have to go?
The first thing I tell my kids the first day of school is, what do you have that I don't have? After hemming and hawing and coming up with all answers, they finally get to the point that time is on their side. And then the next part of that is risk. Well, if time is on your side, what should you be taking more of? They hem and haw again, and they finally get more risk. And that's no different in life than in your financial situation. At an earlier age, at a younger age, you should be taking on more risk. Why is that? You have the opportunity to fall down, perhaps fail, but you could get back up and have more time.
One of the things that I try and distinguish when I talk to people about financial planning, and this is the young and the old, primarily the young, is that there's two differences between between savings. There's a difference between savings and investment. Savings is something that you need to be doing on a regular basis, the 80-20 rule. You need to be setting aside 20% of your net pay. Now, if you're going to take some of that savings and you want to take some risk on that, then you have to peel off a piece of that, maybe 20%, and invest that. And that's okay. You're looking for a higher yield, you're chasing yield, and that's fine as long as you're willing to take on the risk of potentially losing that money. See, I don't want people to save their whole lives and then experience what we experienced in 2008, where they lost 40% of their retirement accounts. The reason they lost 40% is because they did not understand the difference between savings and investment.
So they didn't diversify, really.
They didn't diversify, and I think they were chasing returns. Their advisors, their risk tolerance was not appropriate, and they were, trying to get out of the funds that they were in. It was a panic.
Now, when you go, here we go, we have a little bit of a creep up in the inflation rate, the bond rates, you know more about than I do. Right now, do you think, or I'm going to ask all three of you this, does your company, I know you really depend a lot on your company's intelligence, right?
Yep.
And advisory.
Absolutely.
Research. Does your company feel that that inflation is coming, or is this just a little bounce right now? I'm not asking you to make predictions, because I'm not going to do that.
Sorry, no, I don't think inflation is going to sit there at 1%, 1.25% for the foreseeable future. It's going to rise at some point, and people are going to have to start moving money out of the cash that they may have sitting on their in their checking account, which is earning zero, which will obviously decrease your purchasing power in the future. So they're going to have to step out into the risk curve. It's a matter of how much are they willing to take. Because I know we were talking about risk here before. I always like to start with risk. How much can you afford to lose? And hopefully not get you to that point where you will actually hit that threshold. So let's say if you have $100,000 and I say, if I come back to you 1 year later and you have $80,000, how are you going to feel? Well, if you're going to jump back and say, I'll never invest again, while yes, it's really nice to take risk, maybe you personally should not be taking that much risk yourself.
Although there are many people who lost the 40% or 20% or whatever they did back in 08, 09,
Stuck with it.
and the ones who stuck with it did rather well. The ones who pulled out had to start from scratch. So, I mean, but you just don't know the cycles. I mean, if you're looking at your investments in 2008, 2009, whatever amount of money you were making from your investments and where they went to, and there were some people on television who told everybody to sell and things like that, and people, some excesses there. The question, though, is if you took it all out, you would take many more years to get it back compared to the people who stayed in.
The general rule of thumb that I tell my students in terms of risk and risk allocation, you're going to have to take on risk if you want a higher yield. The general rule of thumb is not play the market. You're in it for the long term. The general rule of thumb that I tell my students is for every year that they get older, they should be taking one less percentage out of a risky type of investment. If you're looking at cash and bonds as being less risk and the stock market and mutual funds as a higher risk, then at the time they're 20 years old, 80% of their money should be in a riskier type of investment, the stock market, and 20% should be in less risky. And then for every year going forward, that should be one less percentage out.
We're going to get the big answers on why wealthier individuals are successful from the author of the book that hundreds of thousands of people have purchased right after this. just looking at some of the Rich Habits training program. I will form good daily habits and follow these good habits each and every day. I will engage in self-improvement. I will devote part of each day to caring for my health. I will save 10% of my gross income. I will control my thoughts and emotions. How can you control your thoughts and emotions every day?
Well,
do you follow your own advice?
I do, Larry. I listen. I come from an Irish Catholic family. We had 11 in our family, and anger was the primary emotion. So I learned to control my anger, and when I talk to the young kids about the Rich Habits, I tell them, look, anger is the most costly emotion that you have, because it's going to cost you relationships.
Takes a lot out of you.
It's draining physically. You don't think clearly, and you're not responding accurately to the situation, whatever you're in. So you want to develop strong relationships in life. Wealthy people know that if they're going to, relationships are the currency of the wealthy. They control their anger. They don't want their customers, their clients, their business partners to be nervous to be around them and work with them. So anger is one of the emotions that the wealthy really go out on a limb to try and control.
Yeah, here's something you got to be interested in. The habits, example one, what you eat every day. Now this is amazing. 70% of wealthy eat less than 300 junk food calories per day. 97% of poor people eat more than 300 junk food calories per day. Working out, 76% of wealthy exercise aerobically, 23% of poor exercise aerobically 4 days a week. Not bad. And TV viewing. Oh, they're not going to like this one. 67% of wealthy watch 1 hour or less of TV every day. 25% of the other income watch 1 hour or less of TV every day. Early to rise, 44% of wealthy wake up 3 hours before work starts. 3% poor wake up 3 hours before work starts. So, basically, I can understand why you got some critique about this book, because it is somewhat a bit of labeling, but this is true, right? How did you find all these stats?
Well, I spent 5 years studying 233 wealthy people and 128 poor people. I have over 200 activities that I tracked, and then I separated the activities into two groups, and then I compared the two groups, and then I came up with this difference that I think is the size of the Grand Canyon. It's really a vast difference between how the wealthy live their lives on a daily basis and the poor do.
But the poor may be happier.
Well, one of the things Larry, that's a great point. Unfortunately, you're wrong. One of the stats I tracked was are you happy? And the wealthy were by far happier because they had fewer financial issues. They had fewer relationship problems. In fact, their relationships were stronger. And their marriages were stronger. That's another thing that I tracked. So the wealthy people were by far happier. The ones that were really miserable were the poor, because they had all of these issues that they had to contend with. The stress associated with those issues made them just miserable and unhappy.
Now, when you meet someone, Brendan, who's, wanting to be more affluent, maybe they're 30 or 40. I assume most of your customers are a little older.
Yes.
All right, but wanting to be more affluent. Wouldn't it be great to target kids who are not making a lot of money, maybe they're 25 or 30, and start saying to them, I want you as a client in 10 or 15 years from now. Maybe that's the way to start it, because I'm going to tell you something. If I was 20 again, there's a lot that I would do differently.
I think that's what a lot of folks would do, and I think that's one of the main things is to start early. The more financial education that we have at a younger age, the better off we're going to be in that 30 to 40 year range when it's about time to come find someone like me to help you out with the next step in your financial future.
Now, when you look at the media today, we are besieged. You've got CNBC, you've got Bloomberg, you've got Reuters, you've got everything, Wall Street Journal. I mean, if you go online every day and look at all these websites, you are besieged, and then you get these headlines. So-and-so, big multi-million-dollar advisor thinks that this is going to happen, or that's going to happen, or this stock is hot. And they're very wrong a lot of the time. So our headlines, it's important to get beyond the headlines, isn't it?
It is important to get beyond the headlines. I think that's, first of all, that's why it's beneficial, if you don't know what you're talking about yourself, to go find a professional financial advisor, financial planner who can help guide you to kind of tune out some of the noise that you're seeing on a daily basis from the CNBCs, from the Bloombergs. But two, also have just a little bit of conviction with what you're doing yourself. Have a little confidence in yourself that you actually did a little bit of the homework, that you've done your work, that you have your financial plan, and that you can stick to it, and that it's going to be a good plan.
Now, in terms of the concept of big-time investors like Icon, or ICANN, depending on what you want to call him, I did have a chat with him one day. Somebody had asked me to talk to him about something, and I found him to be very sure-footed. I'll be nice, okay? Or you look at this person who believes in this industry or that industry, and they say, oh, gas drilling's great, gas drilling's off. Is it better for in any individual, regardless of their income level, whether it's at a local bank, to get some sort of expertise in their life and to make sure they're very scrupulous in finding those people?
I think it's important to get expertise to develop a plan. I look at, focus on the long term, don't let emotions get involved in, specifically when I was trading currency on a very short-term basis. If emotions are getting into your trading decisions, you got to get out of that position and move on. In terms of getting financial advice, yeah, I think it's very important. But again, it comes down to, I think, risk tolerance. How much risk are you willing to take? And base your portfolio on that risk tolerance. Diversification, getting involved in mutual funds instead of individual stocks will be less risky because it's diversified.
So the old concept of more flowers in the garden is real.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the old-fashioned saying is, best way to be rich, buy one stock and be right. Best way to be poor, buy one stock and be wrong. Right? So there's a reason why we have some of these old sayings. Diversify your assets. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. We can probably come up with a number of different things to say that way, but that does hold true.
Well, it's kind of interesting to me that during the height of the stock market boom and this one, you meet friends and they'll say, gold. It's gold. All right? Or it's silver. Or it's platinum. Or it's it's foreign funds. It's domestic funds. Definitely options. Everybody's got their point. And everybody seems to have a story. How much, in your opinion, we'll start with you, does ego play a role in some people's let me put it this way. If you're doing the wrong thing, ego is not a good thing for you to have. It sort of blinds you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it gets in the way of doing the financial planning, that's for sure. And one of the things that I've come up with this cute little catchphrase that I use with clients, and I ask them, are you a wolf in sheep's clothing, or are you a sheep in wolf's clothing? And this is the risk tolerance thing. But what we found out in 2008 were there were a lot of sheep in wolf's clothing. And what I mean by that is when the market starts to tank, they rip off their outer aggressive investment image, and they're sheep underneath it, and they're selling everything. And that's something that a good advisor will really identify with their client. They'll say, look, you know what, you really are a conservative, investment-minded person. We have, in my firm, we do this risk tolerance questionnaire that they have to complete. And then it eliminates all the doubt when you have that piece of paper that they completed saying, oh, I am conservative.
Just quickly, I think that in your case, where you're talking to high school students, nobody ever does that. You may be starting a national trend here.
Well, they all want to take on the most risk possible. We
course,
trade a
because
stock
they're
market
18 years
game,
old.
and just like you were saying, one stock, I'm going to be in first place.
Yeah, but that's not the way to do it over the long term.
Over the long term, you have to be diversified, and again, as you grow older, your risk tolerance has to change. I tell all my students, the advantage of being young is you can take risks. You don't have the responsibility. You don't have the mortgage payment. You don't have the worrying about the kids' college education.
Right.
That now is the time to take risk, and that's in finance as well as other things in life. If you take risks, taking an AP course, well then what comes with that risk is reward. If you're going to take the risk, demand the reward for it.
Brendan, you played basketball in college, and you know that you can't win a game without defense. And no matter how offensively good you are, some people prefer, in times of uncertainty, to take a defensive position, to be careful. If somebody comes to you and says, Brendan, I'm a little nervous, and they say it more than once, you're going to change their portfolio, aren't you?
You're going to absolutely listen to them. We do say very similar. We do a risk tolerance to find out exactly how much you can lose or how much you are comfortable losing before your emotions take over and say, no, I don't want to be in that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go finish up.
No, that you are going to be able to be to stick with the program, because I think that's the most important part. Everybody can take risk, but you have to be able to stick with it.
Brendan Lothry, financial advisor with the Wealth Management Group. Tom Corley, great book. Can't wait to read all of it. And Kurt Balderson, who gave up Wall Street for the young people. And I think that you may be writing a book about those experiences. Good night, everybody, and thanks for being with us.